Welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you share this learning with us. And I haven't said it for a while, but if you ever really want to join the class uh, and yourself and be part of this Zoom group, just let me know. Just contact me through Facebook or YouTube, and I'd be happy to send you the link. So here goes. There's the text. Okay, I think actually I don't know that we finished. Let's see. Yep, we did this parlay, I believe, Dibatam. We're into that. Let's see if we finished Rashi yesterday. Yes, we did. We did get to that. Very good. So, of course, what the Torah is doing here is setting up the stage for us to understand emotionally why the brothers hated Joseph so much to a point that they were willing to kill him. The absolute, I was thinking to myself, there's such a parallel here in some ways with Cain and Abel, right? Because Cain was jealous of the fact that Abel was favored by God. And here we are with the brothers who are jealous of Joseph because he's favored by their father. And of course, there's all that background of Jacob's relationship with Rachel and Leah, all these kinds of things interplay. There's such a rich fabric going on in this story. So here we are going to say, just for on to verse 3, that's all we're on to right now. So more, vaYisrael ahav et Yosef michol banav. And Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. You know, look how much it's hard to control one's inner emotions. Of course, we can criticize Jacob for loving Joseph, and we know that, of course, treating any child like they're second class is going to create all kinds of problems. We have to just try to understand that Jacob had to be so emotionally a wreck in some ways, and that at this particular point, having lost Rachel in childbirth, how precious Joseph would be to him. And of course, Rashi's already told us other reasons why Jacob would have favored Joseph. Why? This is interesting. What the Torah says, Kiven zekunim hulo, because he was to him a child of zekunim, and not the easiest way to understand that, but we could say of his old age. I wondered to myself as I was preparing this and going over it this time around, whether it meant that he recognized that he had an old soul. You may be familiar with that expression. And I've actually met young people with old souls. It's pretty cool, I have to tell you. V'asa lo ketonet pasim, and he made for him a tunic of colors. Colors.
I want to mention that the Targum says var chakim. That's
Yes.
their translation. And I'm
Right.
wondering if, oh, sorry, I'm going to try to turn this off.
Go ahead. I was looking at it too. Go ahead.
Yeah, anyway, the child of
His
his
wisdom. Of his
wisdom.
wisdom. Yes. Chacham, right? Unless Aramaic, it's not a related word, but I think that the kana zikna, kana chokhmah, that if you acquire old age, you acquire wisdom. There is no doubt that that experience is so important.
Oh my goodness. I
Really?
often wish I could do it
Yeah.
again. Just start over again raising children.
Wait a
And
second, but knowing what you know now, that's the difference.
that's what I mean. That's what I
Yeah,
mean. I don't
yeah,
have the physical strength, but I have a lot more wisdom.
right, right. Yes. So that could well be the connection. All right, let's see where Rashi is going to take us. Because there's I love that line from I Love Lucy, where Desi used to say to Lucy, "You got a lot of splaining to do." So we do. Did we make a bracha? I don't believe we did.
No,
So
we
we got to
didn't.
do that right away. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So diving right into Ben Zakunim, right? Shenolad lo la'et ziknato. So funny, by the way, that Rashi is reflecting the conversation that you and I just had. It's so cool, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so okay, that he was born at the time of his old age. Okay. The Onkelos Tirgame and the Onkelos, Onkelos is Targum, right? The Aramaic translation, Bar Hakim Hu Lay. That is. So, in other words, that he was a wise son to him. Koma shilamad mishem ve'aver. Everything that Jacob had learned from Shem and Aver during those years that he spent in the yeshiva. When did he spend those times in that yeshiva? Was when he fled from Esau. And if you figure out the chronology, there's a bunch of years there that are not accounted for, and that is the tradition. Masar lo, he transmitted to him. So this idea of a tradition of learning, of this wisdom passing on from one generation to another, and this is essentially taken from Abraham, where it talks about where God says to Abraham, "Fear not." And the question is, what is Abraham afraid of? He's afraid that he's at that particular point, he's going to die without a child, and he's not going to be able to transmit all the wisdom and experience that he had learned to that child, and that child to his or her child down the line. So this idea of keeping a alive a tradition. Davar acher, another interpretation. Shehaya ziv ikonin shelo domelo. That is to say, that his visage, his face, his facial features resembled his own. And I think that's part of sort of the coolness of being a grandparent. And I don't think it's necessarily a misplaced egotism, but the truth is that some of the stuff that sort of attracts you to a grandchild and that causes you to fall in love with those grandchildren or that grandchild um, has to do with the fact that you can see your own childhood in that child in a way, of course, that you're just not in a place to do when you're younger. And the love you have for a grandchild is so different. I think the Greeks actually have a word for it, which is escaping me now. But it's the kind of love that has no sexual connotation associated. Agape, that's the word, agape. Agape. Second. On.
Pasim.
Yeah, pasim. Okay, this word pasim. So from the tractate Shabbat, page 10, Lashon kli milat, that the word pasim has the meaning of fine fabric, that's milat. I sort of thought it was fine, I guess it is fine wool, or kamo karpas, there's that word pas. Okay, I think Har Hama Pas. I think there should be these are two different words, and this is from the Megillat Esther, Utchelet, and Blue, where they're describing in chapter 1 of the Megillah, they're describing the beautiful appurtenances in the palace of King Ahasuerus. Ketonet hapasim, and he says there are other examples of ketonet pasim, of this tunic of pasim. I won't translate that word for the time being, because we've just tried to understand what it means. The Tamar ve'Amnon, in the book of Samuel, the second book of Samuel, we talk about Tamar and how Amnon was in love with her, his half sister, and that Tamar had this ketonet pasim. Uh, this would be an incredible source for the rag industry, right? How clothes are so amazing, right? And the nonverbal communication of clothing. Well, Midrash Agada, and taking a midrashic approach to this, Al Shem, oh, this is so amazing. That it's pasim, that this word pasim is actually an acronym, Al Shem Sarotav, regarding his troubles, that is Joseph's troubles. Shenimkar le Potifar, he was sold to Potifar. There's the pay of pasim. Ule Socharim, and to merchants. There's the Samach of Pasim. Ule Yishmaelim, there's the Yud of Pasim. Ule Midyanim, there's the Mem of Pasim. Incredible. So that's another way of understanding Ketonet Pasim. So, okay, so how do we sort of make sense of this midrashic interpretation? And what I love about it is that if we're open to midrash and we don't say, oh, it's just a midrash, which I confess when I was much, much younger, I would say, oh, it's just a midrash. And the truth is that midrashim perhaps bring out the greatest elements and open us up to the greatest elements of this incredible literature. So the fact is, it's just explained to us. It comes right after what it just says about Jacob loving Joseph more than any of the brothers. So that in giving him this special clothing, in treating him in a unique kind of way, that the other, which so clearly demonstrated to the brothers how he was the favorite. It's what brought about his troubles. That was a straw that broke the camel's back. So, going on, we are just building up and building up and building up the case for the hatred of the brothers.
I just want to say that the acronym is a little strange because it looks like the letters are in the opposite order of the chronology.
Yes, and that's okay.
It was first the Midianim, then he was sold to Ishmaelim, then to Socharim, and then to Potiphar, right?
I know. That's okay. Even English goes backwards, doesn't it? So remember, it's an illusion. It's an illusion. So, but so we have to be a lot more generous in terms of seeing what's in it. But still, the fact that the 4 letters represent 4 stages of his being sold into slavery. So ultimately,
I didn't want to dismiss it. I just wanted to say,
no, but you're right.
Want to say
maybe
there's some meaning in that backward order.
So okay, so I can attempt a meaning. The main point is that he gets sold to Potiphar, okay? And then we go backwards and say, well, how did he get sold to Potiphar? Socharim. And how did he get into the Socharim? They were Yishmaelim. And who took him out of the pit? The Midyanim. So it's sort of a reverse order of starting with what the ultimate point was and how that transpired.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, that's just an interpretation. Vayiru Echav, just, right? Vayiru Echav, and his brothers saw, Ki oto ahav avihem. By seeing, if there's any doubt in their minds, seeing this garment that he had been gifted, they knew for sure. Now they saw. And in some ways that seeing is believing. They may not have wanted to believe it, but now without doubt, they saw. Ki oto ahav avihem mikol echav. That his father loved him from all the other brothers. From the 11 of them. vaYisna'u oto, and now they were told, now the Torah comes to tell us they hated him. Doesn't say that before. And here is where it finally says they hated him. Velo yachlu dabro l'shalom. They could not speak peaceably to him. They hated him so much they couldn't speak peaceably to him. By the way, later on, I think Joseph is so clueless because, of course, when you're on the receiving end of all this largesse, you kind of feel it's coming to you, and you're not thinking about the fact that other people aren't getting it unless you've been sensitized. So I think he kind of dismisses the fact that the brother, I guess it also could mean that when they spoke about him, it was constantly in a critical kind of way. And not necessarily that they spoke to him that way, but whenever his name would come up in a conversation they had with each other, it would be critical and represent hatred. Velo yachlu dabro l'shalom. They were not able to speak about him peacefully. Mitoch gnutam. So Rashi points out from their discredit. In other words, we know lashon hara, right? I mean, it's awful, right? So from their discredit, lamadnu shivcha, we actually learn something positive about them. We learn something to praise them for. Shelo dibru afat bapeh, because they didn't speak one way in their mouth, va'afat balev, and another way in their hearts. So Rashi is certainly saying that's how they treated him. That when they spoke to him, he is going in a different direction than I did. All right, and they understand, and he'll prove it with the next word, dabro, right? The daber imor, to speak with him. However, dabro could absolutely mean speak about him, speak about him. So of course, Rashi he is the sovereign, he is the dean, the doyen of commentators. But I will tell you that regardless, we know that within the tradition there is the ability to debate. So it's not that I think Rashi is wrong. God forbid, who am I to say such things? That would be ridiculous. But I'm just saying, and maybe it's good that Rashi's telling us this, because the way I interpreted was a way in which to, it would be the sort of natural way to do it. And Rashi doesn't need to comment unless if it's something that I could have figured out or that people could have figured out by themselves. So this is the point that Rashi's trying to say, is that understand this word dabro in its full meaning, which means to speak to him as well. All right. It doesn't end. It is going on. Here, just build up, build up, build up. Vayachalom Yosef Halom. Joseph dreamed a dream. This is the way the divine communication takes place in this story, is through dreams, if there's any divine communication. Vayaged le'achav. Well, look at how clueless this guy is. And he tells his brothers. He told it to his brothers. Vayosifu od snooto. So they wound up hating him even more than they did already. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's go in. No Rashi on that. Vayomer alahem, he said to them, Shim'una hachalom hazeh. Please listen to this dream, asher chalamti, which I dreamt. I believe there's no Rashi on that. The next verse is Rashi. Vehine, behold, anachnu ma'almim alumim betoch hasadeh. We were all binding sheaves in the midst of the field. Vehine, and behold, kama alumati, my sheaf stood erect, v'gam nitzava, and in fact remained so, remained erect. Vehine, and look, tisubena alumatechem, your sheaves surrounded my sheaf. V'tishtachavena la'alamati, and they bowed down to my sheaf. Whoa, talk about clueless. Wow. You tell that to anybody, they're going to just love you, aren't they? Incidentally, I heard just coincidentally that if you want to bore someone, tell them your dreams. So, unless, of course, they love you very much and they don't mind hearing. So, let's take a look here. Um, Ma'almim alumim, hitargumo, as is translated, uh, mechasrin, hasrin, omrin, binding bundles of sheaves. Take a quick look over at the Targum and see what they have. Uh, yep, there it is. Ma'asrin Isran, Begor Chakla. Ma'asrin. So it has to do with tying up in the field, in the midst of the field. So that's why it's a sheaf. So Ma'asrin Asrin from Asar. I think I read it wrong before. And likewise, we have in the beautiful Psalm 126, Noseh Alumotav, who carries his sheaves. Uchamohu, and similarly, the Lashon Mishnah, we find in Rabbinic Hebrew, V'ha'alumot notel umachriz. He takes the sheaves and he announces. And I don't know the context of that statement. I'm guessing, which is a total guess, whether this might have to do with counting the Omer, with Omer counting. I'm not sure. Kama alumati, so he says, nizkafa, it stood erect. So literally it means my sheaf got up. But Rashi explains us, feathers it a bit by saying it was erect, it became erect. Gam v'gam nitzava, again, the Hebrew, not so easy here. La'amod al amda beskifa, to remain where it stood erect. I don't think there's more Rashi on this on the next page. Double check. Nope. Onwards. Vayomru lo echav. His brothers said to him, Hamaloch timloch aleinu. They were no dummies. So they said, are you going to be ruling over us? Himashom tilshom banu means the same thing. In other words, will you have sovereignty over us? Will you rule over us? Ayosifu od snooto, and they hated him even more. Al chalamotav, regarding his dreams, ve'al dvarav, and regarding his words. Dreams play such an incredible part in this story. And of course, we know this dream is a prophecy, because that is going to happen. And it mentions, by the way, how when the brothers eventually wind up in Egypt and they don't recognize Joseph, who is, of course, second in command in Egypt, right? And they're, of course, bowing to him. And it says explicitly in the text how Joseph remembers his dreams. I'm sorry, this story it gets to me. And he dreamt another dream for a second time. And he's going to learn that having the same dream essentially twice has significance. And remember, Pharaoh dreamed twice too. And he explains to Pharaoh the significance of his dreaming twice. And again, the guy is clueless. He doesn't get the message. He also said it to his brothers. He told it to his brothers. So Saper told it. Vayomer, and he said, Hine chalamti chalomod. Look, I just dreamt another dream. Vahine hashemesh, v'hayareach, and behold the sun and the moon, v'achad asar kochavim, and the 11 stars, hint, 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 mishtachavim li, were bowing to me. Oh, sorry, there was a Rashi. Let's see, yeah, chet, right, his words. al devarav, al dibatam ra'a shahaya mevila avihem. Oh, his words, Rashi's explaining that this, which it seems unnecessary, right? We know he's just spoken to them, so obviously that's why they're hating him. So what's the Al Dvarav doing here at the end of that previous sentence? And Rashi tells us it's got to do with the bad mouthing that he brought to their father, which was we were told about very early on, very early on. Let's make sure I've got. No, Vaisaper el aviv ve'elechav. So he told this both to his father and his brothers, Vayig Arbo Aviv, and his father remonstrated against him. He got angry with him, Vayomer lo, and he said to him, Ma hachalom hazeh asher chalamta? What is this dream that you dreamt? Havo navo ani ve'imcha va'achecha? Am I and your mother and your brothers going to come? Lehishtachavot lecha arza, to bow down to you to the ground. Vaisaper el aviv elechav. So we already read, of course, above there. I don't know if Rashi's going to. Um, we said this up here too. Look at that. So there's some duplication here anyway. So so maybe Rashi's going to go into that. La'achar shesiper oto le'echav. So Rashi deals with this duplication. So he says, after he'd shared it with his brothers, Chazar, he again, Vesipro la'aviv bifnehem, he told his father in front of them. So they were standing all together. Dad was there, brothers as well, and now he's telling the dad in front of the brothers after he's already told them. Vayig arbo, lefi shaya matil sin'a alav. So his father got angry with him because he knew dad wasn't blind. He saw that he was placing, hurling hatred upon himself. Now, this Haya, he was, it, the first way to go is that he was correcting Joseph. But I wonder to myself if there's a second meaning, that there's some ambiguity, intentional ambiguity here, that Jacob recognized how much he was creating the problem. And so by getting angry with Joseph in front of his brothers, it might release a little bit of that anger, that they wouldn't be quite so jealous that he was favoring Joseph. Just a possibility of a ambiguity here. Havo navo. This is dad saying to Joseph, are we indeed going to come? V'halo imcha kvar meta. But hasn't your mother has already passed away? Remember, Joseph's mother was Rachel, and we have read about how Rachel passed away. Vehu lo haya yodea. And Jacob didn't understand. Shehadvarim magiim levilha. That in fact, the mother that was referred to by the moon here, right, referred to Bilhah. She got Gedalto Keimo, because she raised him like his mother. Verabotenu lamdu mikan. And our rabbis, our sages learned from this. Ein halom belod varim betelim. So the rabbis are going back to that initial interpretation that that Jacob was saying, this dream is nonsense because your mom isn't alive anymore. So they learned that no dream comes without anything that is irrelevant, okay, or nonsense. In other words, to say that's said negatively in Hebrew, in English, we'd say that every dream has a certain amount of nonsense associated with it. The Yaakov Nitkavein, look at this, okay? And Jacob intended, now Rashi says this explicitly. Jacob intended, Lohotzi Hadavar Milev Banav. and he wanted to remove the feelings that this dream created from his sons' hearts, shelo yikna'uhu, that they not be jealous of him. Lachach amar lo. And for this reason he said to him, Havo navo, are we to come? The Gomer, Kishem she Yifshar beimcha. So the logic being that just as this dream, it's the whole understanding the dream this way, it's impossible for this dream to be true because it's impossible with your mother. Kach hasha'ar hu batel. The rest of the dream is nonsense as well. And we will stop here. I hope I'm convincing you as to why I love this story so much. So, farewell to those who will be leaving us now and those who have joined us through Facebook or other means, and hope to continue this tomorrow.